So we're gonna record, and yeah, I mean, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, this is only our second chance at doing this. Ricky is on, did this last week, did a great job. Again, getting back to the point of this, it's really cool. I mean, drinking and bars are social, right? And it sucks being a liquor store instead of a bar. Jonathan, I'm thinking you can totally commiserate on that. We miss everybody, so this is a really nice way to get this back, get people going, get people socializing, see each other's faces, and for this, learning more about really cool beer. So Jonathan, for us out here, I would hazard to say that a fair amount of our folks have not been to Hopewell. So I love the fact that we can get you on here. You don't have to sit in 3 hours of traffic each way. You can do this, and again, we've been featuring you guys on draft ever since the day we opened. Love your beer. Tony is not on yet. He's one of our bartenders. He says that you guys are one of the biggest pleasant surprises to him, that he didn't know anything about you guys beforehand. So,
oh, great. I love to hear.
I love your stuff. We love sharing your stuff. I'm recording this. Anybody on here, just please mute yourself if your dog starts barking or your kids start crying. And then ask questions in the chat. And then once Jonathan's done, we'll open it up and let you guys ask the questions that are on there. I'll kind of moderate it from there. But from here, man, I'm going to hand it off. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, sure. Well, appreciate you having me. Like you said, this is the easiest beer event I'll ever do, and not having to drive back and forth. But Hopewell, just a quick intro on our brewery. We opened 4 years ago in 2016 with a draft-only, self-distributed brewery with a tap room. So from day one, we always had a tap room. We always saw this as a space. That's where I am right now. I just finished up a tap room curbside pickup shift. And I need to figure out how to mute my messages here. But we always thought the tap room was an important place for people to kind of see our brand, see everything that we do, and then we could have people get to know us here and then move out into the world and drink our beer at spots like Orange and Brew. So we are 4 years in as a brewery. Since we first opened, we have added a canning line. We've expanded our self-distribution network. So when we started, we were really Chicago only, and that's where we are still deepest. Like our longest running relationships and most of the beer that we sell is still within Chicago city limits. But as soon as we could, we've been wanting to self-distribute our beer out to the best spot in the suburbs. So that's Orange and Brew, that's Beer Cellar, that's the spots like that, and kind of grow our suburban presence off of that. So we've been selling at Orange and Brew since you opened. I think I got an email from you before you opened, and we kind of share a little bit of history. We both are from the Champaign area, went to U of I, and so obviously that's exciting. The three owners all went to U of I, and that's where we met. But the beer that we make at Hopewell, we're always trying to make really bright, clean, inviting, welcoming beer. So lagers tend to be a common beer that we brew. Last year we brewed, I think, 8 different Pilsners. In the process, we learned a lot about Pilsners and decided that we wanted to just kind of focus on that. That was I think so Steven, one of my partners, went out to New York, and there's a lot of great Pilsner breweries out there, like Threes and Hudson Valley, spots like that. And when he came back from that visit, he was like, you know what, I think this is going to be the year of the Pilsner at Hopewell. And so we really dug into that, really did a ton of different Pilsners. And those are the kind of beers that we like to make. We're not making beers that you only want one of. Hopefully we're making beers that you want 3 or 4 of. How we started working on this beer, Alphabetical, with Hop Butcher, is we're friends with Hop Butcher, the great dudes. I think that I would say to anyone that they have the absolute best vibes in beer of anyone I've ever met. We we're always next to them at beer fests. That's why it's called Alphabetical, is because Hop Butcher and Hopewell are always right next to each other at beer fest. You can find us in the H section. And obviously, for anyone who's familiar with either one of our breweries, we're making very different styles. They're really deep in the hazy game. They're making beers that have a really nice sweetness to them, super juicy. Our beers tend to be more on the dry side, a lot of lagers, a lot of pilsners. So doing a collab with them is immediately exciting, because doing a collab with a brewery that you're the same as is like, you kind of know what you're going to get. Doing a collab with a brewery that you're making very different beer from, you don't really know how it's going to turn out. So our approach was, we should do a lager, because that's what Hopewell has like really bought into over the past couple of years. But we should hop it the way that Hop Butcher hops their IPAs. And that's exactly what we did. So this beer, Alphabetical, is a double dry hopped lager. We used Hop Butcher's hand-selected Strata. Strata is kind of a newer hop where you get that really dank strawberry lemonade sort of flavor and aroma. It's about 75% Strata, 25% Saaz. Saaz is something that we use in a lot of our lagers. I'd say probably the majority of our lagers. Really nice, grassy, classic, noble hop. And I think it turned out great. You know, it drinks like an IPA. It's got a really nice finish like a lager. It's unlike anything that either one of our breweries have made before. And that's what makes it so exciting. I guess I don't want to kind of just keep talking about whatever you guys are interested in, but
I'm going to tell you, I think I love it because it's such, it might be, I mean, the top of my mind, the best collaboration beer that features both breweries so well. Like a lot of collaborations that I drink, I can, you know, there might be two breweries on the label, but the beer is definitely like one, right? Like one brewery. And you guys have really, and part of that is a lot of breweries, when they collaborate, they're making similar beers that they're already familiar with. I love the fact that, you know, Justin from Hop Butcher can make a good lager. He make a good crisp IPA, but obviously, as you mentioned, they hung their hat on the hazies and the milkshakes, which are phenomenal and super popular. You guys are on the lager side, the nice crisp beer. This beer blended with your crispness from your brewery, and then that Strata hop is amazing to me. Like that strawberry lemonade on the front end, the dankness on the back. It's crazy how you guys are able to meld that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be interesting because we'd love to repeat the collab at their brewery. We did this one at our brewery, which is in Logan Square in Chicago, Milwaukee Avenue in Diversey. But the next time we've said, like, we want to make this beer, maybe reversing the hops. So maybe 75% Saaz, 25% Strata at the Hop Butcher brewery, and kind of see how it turns out differently, and really experiment with hops in the way that those guys are famous for. You know, they are the most curious about hops of anyone I've ever met.
What was the, I guess, what was the inspiration for, how did the beer actually come about, what you guys chose to do for it? What's the process like when you sit down and say, all right, we want to do a collaboration? How do you figure out what it's going to be?
That's a really good question. So it starts with, like I said, just being friends from beer festivals. They are some of the best dudes I've ever met, period. So first of all, just liking them and kind of wanting to work with them is exciting in itself. But also we have a similar and very different business model. So we're both self-distributed. So already I'm curious about what other self-distributing breweries are doing, see if we can be doing it better. But they are 98% packaged beer. And we are, like, until recently, until the global crisis, we were about 50-50 draft beer and packaged beer. We were really going after those on-premise accounts. So there's a certain curiosity there that kind of gets our breweries interested in each other, where we're doing the same thing. We're delivering our own beer to different accounts, but it's very different the way that we do it, since they are almost all packaged beer. They're doing large drops of more like of the trendy styles that you have to do every week. We're building core and trying to have core beers that are available year round.
No,
That's kind of how it started that we would be interested in this. But I think it could look like, let's get together. And then we got together with Jeremiah, Jude, me, Samantha, Steven. Samantha and Steven are partners at Hopewell. And then Jake is our brand director. And we just got together and drank a ton of beers. So we just kind of lined up, here's a couple Hop Butcher beers. Here's a couple of Hopewell beers that we are excited about. Here's some beers from other breweries that we're excited about. Let's talk about what this could look like and like, what do we really want to highlight? And so we spent 4 hours just kind of talking about that, also talking about each other's businesses, seeing if there's anything we could kind of learn from each other. And from there, we were able to kind of select the flavors that we wanted it to be. And so that's where we came up with using Hop Butcher's Strata. That's where we basically came up with the malt bill. This has, I think it's 20% rice. So we use 20% rice just to give it that like super crisp, really snappy finish, which is something that we started doing in our Italian Pilsners. So we had one called Alpi that I think you poured a half barrel of at your spot. And so we kind of like learned from each other and how we're doing each one of those beers at that first meeting, and then go home, do the homework, wrote a recipe, send it to each other back and forth a couple times until we're both happy with it. And then we pick a brew day, and they come and hang out all day while we and eat chicken sandwiches with us while we're brewing the beer. And then sure enough, about a month later, it was ready to package, and we're in the middle of this global crisis. So it all went to cans instead of having some draft. And that's kind of how we kind of made it both of ours, is that we met up a couple times. We were in constant communication about this recipe and just ready to change everything.
Where did the name come from?
So Alphabetical, I think Jeremiah came up with this name. It comes directly from that, the Beer Fest story. So we met at Beer Fests because our breweries are in alphabetical order. So Hop Butcher and Hopewell are always pouring next to each other. I think the first one was at Bug at Beer Under Glass, which is one of my favorite fests. I hope that we get back to Beer Fest season as soon as we can.
Just wait.
Those are so much fun. So I'm seeing some questions. Eric, do you have this right now? I know you do because we just dropped off a bunch of cases yesterday.
Oh, yes. We have a ton of it. Just for this, and let me rephrase, we've had a ton of it. We've moved a fair amount of it. A lot of people wanted to have it coming in today to give it a try, so that's awesome. We're super stoked about it.
Yeah, and
I've been getting quick to hold on to it. Yes.
Can I turn the interviewer card on you and just ask you, do you mind? I want to ask you.
I asked the questions here, John.
What's different about how you're operating right now? So you're doing curbside, I assume. Are you doing pre-orders, or how are you dealing with this?
You know, we're as the number one question today, we're on number two. Number one was, how are you guys doing, right?
Yeah.
So how is everything, which is awesome. People are so nice about it. But we've had to learn to go from a bar to a liquor store. So ordering for us is different. I'm sure like your brew schedule is going to change, and your packaging schedule. So we've had to change the business model on the fly. We're fortunate, I'm sure like you guys are, to be in a neighborhood that people really care. They care about small business. They care about everybody's success. And they've been in Downers Grove and are surrounding ridiculously generous. So we're fortunate. And I say every day that we have a decent day and we can, break even or make a couple dollars to reinvest in more stuff on the shelves, one day closer to the end of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I am gonna, let's see. So I'm just gonna look at a couple questions. Oh, actually, I want to ask you another question before we get to those.
Yeah, sure.
And a reminder to mute yourself. So I can't mute everybody. It doesn't look like, or let me rephrase. I can mute everybody, but then that means I mute Jonathan. So we don't want to do that too. So if you're not talking, go ahead and mute yourself. Your can art is very distinctive too. It's simple, clean. Who does your cans? How did you guys get to that?
Yeah, so we work with a couple different local artists on our cans. A a lot of the cans that we've been doing recently have been an artist, Ellen Wild, who she's an artist in Pilsen in Chicago. But we started with a branding company since our business plan. So when you're fundraising, we wanted to show people kind of what the final product would look like. So we started with a branding company. We have a relationship with them since 10 years before we opened. They're a small company in Portland, Oregon called OMFG Co. Stands for Official Manufacturing Company, but you can tell how seriously they take themselves from their name, OMFG Co. And we met them when they were a 2-person company. Now they are, I think, a 50-person company. They're a really serious branding company. But we had a really long-standing relationship, kind of established brand guidelines, because the thing that we've always been trying to get across with our beer and with our art is that we are a welcoming brewery. We're not trying to be the toughest brewery in town. We're trying to be a brewery that's making beer for everyone. We try to always make sure that kind of comes across. One thing I'll point out with this can design, so you were talking about the name Alphabetical. So there are 26 lines on the can, and the only red one is, I forget what number it is, but it's the H line if it was an alphabet. So that's kind of where the design for this specific can comes from. That's awesome.
I want to ask, where'd you guys come up with the name for your brewery?
Going back to the original.
And hold on, let me stop you real quick. By the way, it is also, for such a simple name, the most mispronounced brewery name in our
good Hopewell.
Yeah.
You know, the first collab we ever did was with Weiner Brewing Company. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling you on this, but we were kind of saying, like, you know, people always mispronounce our name. It's Hopewell. And he goes, oh, Wiener. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind Hopewell so much anymore. But we came up with the name because we wanted a name that exuded positivity. So hope and well are two really nice words mashed together. It's also a word that has roots in the Midwest. There's an archaeologist with the last name of Hopewell. So you'll see a ton of stuff named Hopewell after that archaeologist. So it feels familiar. I think there's like a Hopewell, Virginia. There's a bunch of stuff named Hopewell. But to us, the most important thing was the feeling you get from Hopewell. When we opened, there were no other breweries in Chicago that were doing like that bright tap room thing. Like our tap room is all white and it looks like an art gallery almost. We opened in a sea of breweries that were all like metal themed, which I love metal. I play in a metal band, but that's not the brand that we wanted to put out there with Hopewell.
Awesome. All right. Jeff Umbach, you've got a question. Are you still on? I'm looking. Yep, you're there. Hey, if you want to, I'm going to unmute you. You don't even have to. I think I'm going to. There you go. Oh, ask your question. Fire away.
All right. So I was just kind of wondering, just how new is this Strata hop? This is the first time I've seen it, and I can't recall having any other beer with it before now.
That's a really good question. So I don't know the exact age. I can tell you that I first started seeing Strata hops maybe 6 months ago. That's not to say that people weren't making beers with them before that, but there is a Strata hopped Hop Butcher beer, and I'm blanking on which one it was. Is it Tavern Cut? I think Tavern Cut might have some Strata in it. But let's go to the audience to see if they know. But this is definitely a very special hop, and with hops, it's kind of different row to row how they taste. So what's so special about these Strata hops are that these hops were hand selected by Hop Butcher, meaning that they would be, I don't know if they went to the broker or the farm or what, but they would actually take some of the hops, rub it in their hands, smell it, and row by row of even a specific farm, each one will taste a little different. So part of the reason this beer tastes so great is because they put in the work and were given the opportunity to hand select some of those hops. We were actually planning on doing our release party at the tap room and having a hop rub with the Strata. Obviously, we can't invite anyone in, especially not to be rubbing a bunch of hops in our faces right now. But hopefully, when everything gets back to normal, we can repeat this beer with them and do it if they open up a tap room. So.
Nice. All right, Ricky's got a couple of questions. Actually, I'm gonna let you go ahead and put them in order. I couple tongue in cheek. I like that.
Handful of questions.
Good, awesome question. So go ahead.
So the first and foremost, how did you guys decide to package lager in 8-ounce cans? My exact question, I'm just going to read it verbatim. So I said, although I've never been able to drink just one, I feel like the packaging and marketing on that beer is, plus it's called Little Buddy, which is like the best name ever. How did you guys come up with that? Like, that's just genius. I mean, obviously it stands out on the shelf. Yeah, lager in 8 ounces. People that typically drink lagers don't normally drink only 8 ounces of it. So
yeah, you know what? That has been a really nice surprise for us, Little Buddy. And for anyone who's wondering, Orange and Brew's got them. It's the 8-ounce lager called Little Buddy. We do 8-ounce 4-packs. We bought our canning line, I think 2 years ago now. Because we're going into summer. So about 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago. And when we bought our canning line, you have to set up which can sizes you're going to do. And they were like, you want to do 8-ounce cans? We're like, yeah, we can pay the extra money to do that, and we'll figure out what goes in those cans later. So we had a lot of different ideas of what would be in those cans. Everyone's first thought is a big imperial stout. We were also thinking maybe doing some of our wild barrel-aged stuff in those cans, but we end up putting all that beer in 500 milliliter glass because it's all bottle conditioned. So that actually helps the flavor. So we kind of kept pushing it down the road, what we were going to put in the 8-ounce cans. And like I said, we're mostly an on-premise only brewery at the start. The heart of our relationships in Chicago has always been on-premise spots. So the concept started as, let's make a beer, let's call it Beer Back. It's an on-premise only beer for Bloody Marys. And that was the original concept, was we were going to be like the craft Bloody Mary Beer Back. Because if you live in like Illinois or Wisconsin and you get a Bloody Mary, you get a beer back with it. And it seemed like nobody was going after that. So when we started our sales plan for it, we were like, all right, how many accounts will we need to have buy this in to keep this beer fresh? Because we're not going to sell a whole lot of it, but it could be a fun thing to do, and maybe they'll buy some draft from us if we do that. So we were approaching it more from a standpoint of like, how much do we need to sell in order for this to work? Over the course of time, we were like, we don't want it to be pigeonholed into just being a beer back. So let's call it Little Buddy, because this would just be like a Little Buddy that can go with wine, or it can go with other beer, or it can go with whatever. So we ended up calling it Little Buddy. We were going to maybe do 12 packs. We were going to maybe do 6 packs. Ended up at 4 packs because it was a good number for the price to get to a $6 thing. So we kind of backed our way into what we thought would be like an easy little add-on. And it turned out we're selling a whole lot more of it off-premise than we were on-premise. Nice. So we still got some of those Bloody Mary placements. There are some of those spots that are doing really well with that. But what we didn't realize when we were making it is that we are the only craft brewery in the United States putting lager in 8-ounce cans. There's a brewery from Nicaragua that's doing lager in 8-ounce cans that you can get in LA. But other than that, every other craft brewery with 8-ounce cans is doing imperial stouts. Yeah. So we didn't even think that we were being unique, and it turned out we were. And it kind of switched from how much do we need to sell to how many accounts can we actually add and still keep up with this. So we've been, until recently, on allocation with that, where if you hadn't ordered it before, you weren't allowed to order it in. Now we can kind of keep up.
Nice. That worked out well.
That's a good question, though.
I have another good question that kind of you kind of segued into it, but then we kind of passed it up. And I'm skipping around now on the order of the questions that I asked in the chat. But you mentioned, initially wanting to use or tossing around the idea of using those 8-ounce cans for imperial stouts. So as a brewery that primarily makes light lagers, pilsners, mixed culture ales, and easy drinking pale ales, when can we expect to see a lactose-laden 30-plus Play-Doh imperial stout coming from you guys?
We don't do a lot of beers like that. That said, every November we do a beer called Big Cold Brew. So it started with our first summer. Every summer since we've opened, we've done a beer called Cold Brew, which is a 4% easy drinking light brown ale with coffee, and it's really coffee focused, coffee first, trying to get that really nice fruit aspect of coffee that you can get pushed forward. We're actually brewing that again in 2 weeks, and we'll have it out again this year. But we decided 2 years ago to do, for the first time, a milk stout, which we had never messed with at all. And it turned out really nice, so we did it again this year. Even having said that, though, we are not going to be your go-to pastry stout brewery. It was fairly dry. It is a milk stout, but it's nice and balanced, and the coffee just kind of adds some bitterness. At the end of the day, nobody opens up a craft brewery to make something that they don't drink a lot of. So we still kind of approach it from a standpoint of like our initial goal, which was balance and slightly on the drier side beers. And there's a lot of really great pastry stouts out there. So I'm not sure if and I like drinking those too, but I'm not sure that we would have a unique voice making a 30 Play-Doh milk stout.
Of course.
Now, some
also sounds really tough in the brew house.
Some have to learn how to make those beers to keep the lights on.
Yeah, well, I mean,
always make what the brewers like to drink, unfortunately.
Fair enough. And I heard once there was an instructor where my partner Steven does most of the brewing. I tend to be more on the sales and distribution side. But where he went to school at UC Davis for brewing, there was an instructor that said, if people start wanting foam on the bottom of their beer, you got to learn how to make foam on the bottom of the beer. And that, I mean, fair enough. We definitely are making beer for people to drink. So it's not just what we want. It's not just like, oh, this is the beer we like. But we always try to have our same Hopewell voice on whatever we're making.
And last question for me, and then I'll stop hogging the mic here. This is more tongue-in-cheek. Have you guys considered collaborating with Metropolitan and Dovetail to make the crispiest crispy boy the world has ever seen?
That sounds like a lot of fun to me. One of the first spots that I'm going to go, pardon me while I open up another crispy boy here.
Wow.
One of the first spots that I'm going to go once everything opens back up is Metropolitan's tap room.
Oh, yeah.
They have one of the most beautiful tap rooms. They found the only pretty part of the Chicago River and opened up a tap room on it. But love drinking their beer. Also love the dudes at Dovetail. We met before we even opened either one of our breweries, and we've had a similar business model the whole time. So I love drinking their beer too. That said, like we were saying at the beginning of this call, I think collaboration beers are the most fun when you're working with someone who you don't make similar beers to. So maybe we got to do a collab next with someone doing a 30 Play-Doh milk stout and see what happens when we do that. Do a Pilsner / 30 Play-Doh milk stout.
I don't know how well that'll work, but I'll pick it up for sure.
Sounds gross, but we should try it. So I'm pouring one. I've got our first Pils. So this is the first beer we ever brewed, was called First Lager. And we decided to redo the cans on that. So now it matches the rest of our cans at 16 ounces. And we renamed it First Pils. It's always been a Pilsner. It just gets a little bit more specific. But we also changed the recipe. We added a dry hop to it. So I've been enjoying the hell out of drinking this after drinking something really hoppy. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Ricky, I think that's the best question. I'd love to. I mean, those are some of the best lagering breweries in Chicago, or even beyond. So that'd be it'd be interesting. I wouldn't know where one brewery started and the other one ended though.
Yeah.
Hey Jeff, I'm going to unmute you because you had another good question on the style here.
Yeah, so when I was checking this one into Untapped, I noticed it was classified as India Pale Lager. Would you say that's accurate? Because I don't know who put that first entry in there, if that was you or if just the first person who checked it in just figured, oh yeah, it tastes like an IPL, I'll just put that down.
It's a good question. We definitely went back and forth with Hop Butcher a lot on what to call it, and kind of deferred to their expertise on what to call hoppy shit, because they are the hop dudes. I think India Pale Lager is a great description of what it is because it is bitter. It has a ton of hops in it. I mean, this has a truly insane amount of hops in it. But we on the can, I think we call it a strata hopped lager. Yeah. So we thought that was the gesture, was like dry hopped lager or strata hopped lager, where you get that really big fruit aroma and fruit flavor. We were worried calling it an IPL, it might not be bitter enough for. And I also feel like in the past when we've made hoppy lagers, hoppy lager doesn't seem to resonate with people. IPL doesn't seem to resonate with people on a beer menu at a bar. It does seem to resonate with people on packaged beer, like cans. So in the past, when we've made hoppy lagers, they all tended to have party in the name, and we just started calling them party lagers. But that didn't resonate with people, obviously, either, because nobody else was doing it. So I think that the next time we make a beer like this, and we are planning on making another beer like this, because I absolutely love how this turned out. The next time we make a beer like this, we're going to call it a double dry hop lager.
Interesting.
But style is all arbitrary at this point. I mean, you can, as long as you kind of understand what you're buying, I think that's what's most important. We never want someone to see the style, taste it, and be like, oh, I wasn't expecting that at all. So hopefully whatever we label it, you're expecting what you taste.
Yeah, Jeff mentioned this is the third one he's even come across. We were trying to talk about that. So we use this as one of the beers that Ryan at Beer on the Wall is doing these mixed tasting things. So he actually was nice enough to invite us on Monday to join him. And we were all brainstorming, we've heard the style, we know the style, but God, we were trying to think of another example. The only one I could think of is Stone does an IPL. Who else does one?
Stone does one. I've had one from Lakefront, but maybe that was just when I was visiting them. I don't know if it hit distro. Someone just said Founders has one. I know I've had one from, I feel like I've had one from Flying Dog. They're a style that kind of pops up because at the end of the day, IPAs are the top selling beer. And so you're always trying to think of, from a standpoint of what you said, of we want to make beer people are going to buy. How else can we make an IPA so that someone can buy it besides our IPA? So I feel like everyone's going to continue to try to do the IPL sort of thing. And this is slightly different in that it's double dry hopped. If we call the double dry hopped ale, if we called this a double, if we used an ale yeast and did a double dry hopped ale, but it was that, if it wasn't hazy, I think we'd have a problem. But since it's a double dry hopped lager, I don't think people expect it to be super hazy or super turbid.
I am unmuting Sam. Carrie, we're gonna come back to this. Sam's question, I think, is more connected to what we were just talking about. Sam, go ahead and ask your question. Sam's a brewer, by the way, so he's our technical guy in here too.
Oh no, I'm the sales guy.
So I've been experimenting with, I actually have some yeast I harvested in my backyard, and I've been brewing it at different temperatures just to kind of see what happens. And I know a lot of people will brew with USO 5, and they'll brew at 55, 57 degrees, which is kind of lager temperature. So in this particular beer where you're not going for that really, really, really clean, crisp, whatever, what do you think the lager yeast adds as opposed to like a cool fermented ale?
Well, I think one of the main parts of lager yeast, to me and my understanding of it, coupled with Steven, who's our brewing expert, is that lager yeast is yeast that does really well at a low temperature. So any yeast you use is going to act differently at different temperatures. So Saison yeast, we will frequently with our Saison yeasts even throttle the temperature back a little bit if we don't want that really intense ester. Or conversely, with a lager yeast, if you do a lager yeast at ale temperatures, and we're doing everything in Celsius because Steven's a nerd, but if you do a lager yeast at ale temperatures, you end up with steam beer where you get more lager or more yeast characteristic, more ester, more of that. So fundamentally, lager yeast is just yeast that works really well at low temperatures, because the last thing you want with any beer is under attenuation, where you get that really cereally, grainy, like just unfermented flavor. So we are actually, with this one, we do 72 hours at 12 degrees Celsius. So a pretty decent lagering temperature. Bring it through primary, and then based on our readings, we take daily readings to make sure it's through primary fermentation. We are allowed to jump up to 18 degrees Celsius so that it can age out, so that we can get through our diacetyl rest, so that we can get through all of the rest of fermentation, and then still serve it fresh so that the hops are able to really sing in it, because otherwise you are left with old hops and a really crisp beer, but hopefully we're accomplishing a really crisp beer and fresh hops. And that's kind of our philosophy with all of our Pilsners, is that we want it to be really good hop flavor, really fresh hop flavor, but really clean beer. And I think lager yeasts, there are really only 4. Like there's only 4 lager yeasts that are out there. They might call them some other stuff. But it's all based on, and I forget the names of all the different breweries that isolated them, but there's really only 4 lager yeasts. And there's hundreds and hundreds of ale yeasts that are clean yeasts, and even more wild and funky and crazy stuff. With this specific beer, I think we're using the Weihenstephaner. That's kind of our house lager yeast. And what I think it brings to it is the finish. So the front half of this beer is big, punchy, really aggressive. But the finish of it, there's no grain left at all. Your palate is totally clean. What we're always worried about with any beer like this that's higher alcohol, this is only 6.5, but still higher than a lot of other lagers. We're worried about under attenuation, worty sort of tasting beer, like W-O-R-T. If it tastes worty, I think that it tastes bad and it makes you not want to drink more of it. And so I think that the lager yeast at that low temperature does a good job of fermenting through all of the available sugars, and then leaving whatever's left very clean.
That helps, Sam?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to move to Carrie. So we've been talking a lot of lagers. We know you guys do a lot of lagers. You've won some awards for another style of beer. Carrie, I'm going to open it up for you. You there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my thing muted. No, the Neon series of beer is one of the first Hopewell beers I ever had, actually.
Awesome.
I haven't tried the new one yet, but I think it was the apricot one. That was the first one I had, and kind of how you guys got into that style, because they have a very unique visual, like when you go to buy any kind of packaged beer, and then the taste is always.
Yeah, so we've made wild beer actually since my wedding. The first wild beer we made, I got married 3 months after we opened the brewery, which was a stupid thing to do. It wasn't stupid to get married. I love my wife, but it was stupid to get married 3 months after opening up a business. And for our wedding, we made a wedding beer that was a Saison aged with Brett and Michigan tart cherries. And that beer was beautiful. It was really great, dry, funky, fruity, a little bit of overripe pineapple sort of flavor. I actually still have a 6-barrel of it that I'm going to open on our 10th anniversary. But But that beer we submitted to FOBAB. It was the first beer we ever had in barrels. And it won a bronze at FOBAB, the Festival of Barrel Aged Beers. So we were like, oh, dang, we really ought to make some more of this beer. So we brought in a couple more barrels. We were just bringing in basically neutral oak barrels. So we bought a bunch of barrels from Brooklyn Brewery. They were really looking for that first use flavor. They were using them for a beer that was trying to get that bourbon sort of flavor. We washed them out so that they were basically just oak barrels. Washed them out a bunch of times with hot water and just used them as neutral vessels to be fermenting our oak aged wild beers in. So there's a bunch of Brett, there's a bunch of different bacterias in it, and we just kind of put the beer in there, taste them every couple months, see how they're doing, and then if they start tasting good, we blend them together. If they start tasting really bad, we dump them. And that was kind of our program for a little while of wild beers. From that program, we won another FOBAB medal. I think we got a silver in year 2, and then we got a gold in the 3rd year, which was actually runner-up for best in show. So we've been really proud of how that program has performed. And wild beer is a style that I love drinking. It's something that is different every time. We don't sell a lot of it because people don't buy a lot of it. Although recently people have been buying a lot more. I don't know if it's just because everyone's home and you want to try something new or like this is your vacation. But recently they've been selling a lot better. But we have always wanted this to be kind of how we play in like the very craft, very like trendy sort of section of beer. So we have always one coming out, usually once a month. But then bringing to your question of Neon kind of came from our love of natural wine. Let me grab a bottle just so I can show off.
Yeah, these are really cool. That's a good question, Kerry.
So
They are, yeah. As he walks around, we just brought in the new one. It's
yeah, so Neon right here.
yeah, that's the one is that the one no, we just brought in the one with lemon peel too.
Yeah, so this one's black raspberry and lemon peel.
Okay, cool.
So these are beers that are based on our love of natural wine, which is funky. It's different every time. Drink it while it's fresh, but like try not to be too precious about it. So we are doing all of the fermentation on these beers is done in plastic totes. So these are not oak aged. We're using the same hops that they use in High Life on these beers so that we can put them in clear bottles and they won't skunk out. So it's Tetra hops pre-separated. But it's not a selling point that they're done in plastic totes, but we do think it captures the ethos of natural wine where it's like, drink it now, let's not be too precious about it, let's make something really cool, something really tasty. And so for every Neon beer, we're using fresh local fruit. So this is Michigan black raspberries. There's a bunch of Brett, there's a bunch of bacteria in here. They end up tasting pretty yogurty. And we just bring in a ton of fruit from farms that we met through our bar partners. So the restaurants that we work with small farms that are doing really beautiful fruit. And that's what we do. We buy fruit from those farms. We throw it in the totes, usually whole, let it ferment for a couple months, put it in the bottle, let it ferment for another couple of months in the bottle. And then we'll have something in a year or two that we can sell. So this is what we have out right now. It's the black raspberry lemon peel Neon. We've released an apricot strawberry. We've done a raspberry plum. Next up, we're going to have a peach blueberry, which they'll definitely have at Orange and Brew. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for when we have that.
What else? So I'm just trying to think of, it's almost like you guys fell into the sour stuff. Where did you, tell us a little bit about how you guys met. There's 3 of you that are co-owners, right? Or co-founders?
Yeah. So there's 3 of us.
We touched on the Illini part. I'm just,
Yeah, so we met at the U of I. I met Steven, who's our brewmaster, at U of I in the dorms. I heard him playing harmonica, and I was like, that guy seems weird and cool. Let's hang out. So we started hanging out. He's the one who got me interested in beer from the beginning. So there was a couple of decent beer stores in Champaign. Friar Tuck was where we would usually ride our bikes to. And we kind of, over the course of the couple of years that we ended up living together, drank just about everything we could get our hands on. We were one of those people who would save all of our beer bottles and display them in our house. I think we had like 500 beer bottles by the end of it. And then Samantha was a really great friend of ours as well. And Stephen and Samantha are now married. And then the three of us are partners in Hopewell. And we, at one point, probably where the concept of Hopewell came from is we went on a trip where we visited every national park and every brewery along the way from Chicago to Seattle, back through California and Colorado. So it was about a month-long trip that we did, just drinking beer, camping, doing backcountry camping, and hanging out together. And from that, if you can spend 3 or 4 weeks in a tent with someone and not want to kill them, you can pretty much do anything with that person. And we've been really, I've been really just grateful to have them as partners because we all kind of fill a different role. Stephen is the scientist who's making the really awesome beer, and he's more thoughtful. If you put me in a brew house, I'd be terrible at it. I don't like following rules. I like being out talking to people. I like being out tasting beer with people. I like delivering beer. I like figuring out logistics. And then Samantha runs our front of house and does all of our marketing and everything like that. So the three of us are a really good partnership in that way.
Where did you guys go drink good beer down there?
So one of the spots was Crane Alley. Crane Alley is a good spot,
right?
Which we ended up, the person who was the two managers of Crane Alley at the time that we were drinking there now work at Hopewell. And we didn't know them, but just sort of a coincidence.
Did any of you work in bars down there?
No, we didn't. We were home brewing. We were drinking a lot. But we didn't work in bars down there. My background is more in sales and distribution. I've worked at a couple different CPG companies. Stephen has always worked in beer. He worked at Brooklyn and Widmer. But our experience is not from actual bars. So as soon as we could, we hired someone to actually help us run the tap room.
That was a smart idea.
She fired me real quick. I'm not allowed to bartend.
Except now.
Yeah, except for right now, yeah.
And actually, that probably leads us into a good segue. It doesn't look like any other questions, and it does lead us to a good segue back to Ricky, because actually, he's a joking question, but it's important, not so much for his question, but just for all of us right now in this industry. Go ahead, Ricky.
What advice do you have for a guy who may have launched a brewery during the COVID-19 epidemic?
Oh, man, you shouldn't have done that.
I know.
I'm just joking. The only beer being sold right now is in package, so hopefully you have a great relationship with, if you don't have your own canning line. Do you have your own canning line?
No, I'm actually contract brewing out of Church Street, which they have their own canning line.
Oh, great. So you'll be fine. People are drinking like crazy.
Perfect. I was going to say, Ricky, you're lucky to have a tap room.
We haven't been introduced. What brewery are you with?
Foreign Exchange.
Oh, we got some of your beers from Hop Butcher.
Your guy was there picking up yeast, and I gave him a few cans.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Those are really tasty.
No problem. Cheers.
I'm sorry. I thought you guys knew each other. All right.
We did not. This is our first time. One of his dudes was there picking up yeast from Justin, and I was doing my deliveries. I just happened to stop by, and I ran back to the car, grabbed some cans. Here you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That was really fun to try. Advice otherwise?
Be glad you haven't opened a tap room yet and have employees that you have to work with.
Normally I would say open a tap room. Now I won't say that. But we have always put our people ahead of everything. So the people that work at Hopewell are more important than the beer. And so when we were kind of approaching this crisis, we always tried to approach it from a standpoint of our people get paid first, then the banks, then our landlord, whatever. Because that's what's most important. Those are the people who are solving the problems every day. And like Hopewell is not the 3 partners at Hopewell. It's not me, Sam, and Steven. It's the 13 people that work at Hopewell. So for a short time, we had to furlough our front of house staff because it looked like they would actually make more money on unemployment than what we were able to pay. Now it looks like we'll be able to bring them back in the next week or so with some new developments. But really, the people are the most important part of any business. But then after that, it's all about quality. We try to not release any cans without doing a 4-day hold. We kind of plate everything and make sure that there's nothing growing in it that we don't want growing in it. And if anything goes wrong, which something will go wrong, it's more about how you deal with something going wrong than the fact that something went wrong. So when I say something going wrong, if there's an infection in your beer, if the seams aren't good, anything like that, it's more about communicating early on fixing the problem and getting good beer into people's hands than it is like, oh shit, something went wrong. Let's just hope nobody reaches out, because they might not reach out and never buy your beer again.
All right, so I wanted to keep you to an hour. What's next? What are we going to see released? What's new?
New beers that we have coming up. We have another Fooder beer. So we just released our Fooder Pale Ale and our Fooder Pilsner. Both of those beers turned out awesome. The next one's going to be a Fooder Bock. So that should be really nice, really malty. We're doing our first Hefeweizen, which should be fun, called Here and There. We have on the brew schedule to do another double dry hopped lager. So you can look forward to that in the next couple of weeks, or in a couple of months. And then a beer that we had that did way better than expected, going back to appreciating your people and trying to treat them well, is Stay Well. So Stay Well is a pale ale that we made featuring Azaka hops. We use London 3 yeast in it, so it's really nice fruit character, but finishes fairly dry and clean. That is a beer that sold way faster than we were expecting. Oh, and the other part of this beer is that Stay Well, all of the proceeds are going to paying our employees' salaries and keeping them on staff. We sold out of that really quick, so we're rebrewing it, and we'll have that back in like 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness, dude. Yeah, so by the way, you just we're closed.
Oh, there's some Stay Well.
We're closed right now, by the way, but we opened the door, and I see it. You just sold a can of Stay Well. It's literally the last can here, and a 4-pack of Alphabetical is going there.
Yeah, I'm sold out over here.
I know. We tried, and you said. Yeah. Oh, and he grabs a filthy animal.
Filthy animal, nice.
That's a good one. A little mulled wine. Boy, this is the power of suggestion right now. You've got 7 beers right there, and they're all Hopewell. That's awesome.
Let's start doing this every day. We'll sell a whole lot of Hopewell.
I love you. You talk. Hey, that Fooder Pills is amazing. I'm looking. Adam, I just pulled your picture up over here. I'm looking. I saw your big smile when he started talking about that. Those Fooder beers are awesome. You're onto something with those. I know they're like labor intensive for you and take a lot of space, but man, amazing beers.
They're so good. We actually did a second batch of the Fooder Pills because we just sold out, but we'll be packaging that in another week or so. And I kind of want to just keep that going. The Fooder Pills is so good that I kind of don't want to do anything else in the Fooder.
No, they're great. All right, last thing we need from you. We need your neighborhood and the address over there so all these people can come see you now.
Absolutely. Well, at a distance, you can come see us in Logan Square in Chicago.
When things get better, when we get at that bar and we can do this live in person.
Yeah. It's 2760 North Milwaukee. Right now, we are doing curbside pickup. We're not doing any transactions at the tap room, so just go to our website, hopewellbrewing.com. You can pre-order your beer. If you live within Chicago city limits, we'll do a home delivery next day. If you don't live within city limits, you can come do a tap room pickup. Otherwise, you can find our beer, everything that we make, at Orange and Brew, and Eric will take care of you.
Awesome. Hey, we can't wait. You know what? I think we're going to have to get a field trip organized up here. We're going to have to get a little bus and make some. We're going to have to, because you got some amazing breweries around you with some really cool people too. So
yeah, oh, absolutely.
Count on it. I think we're going to have to start doing some quarterly trips up there.
Sounds great. We'll see you soon.
Man, thank you so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. Hey, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. Pretty much kept everybody on this whole time. You were
oh, that's great. Appreciate it, everybody. Appreciate the questions. Appreciate you being on this. This is really fun.
Have a good weekend, guys. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.